Okay, now we focus on Philippine-China relations of 2017. We've come a long way from 2016 and the first visit of President Duterte to China and the handshake with President Xi Jinping. Let's go back and just take a recall of the image at that time. There you have it, Western press reporting on President Duterte's handshake with President Xi Jinping, and many things have happened already. I'll have a 2-3 minute summary of the past, and then we'll go to Mr. George C., Director, and I should say, Chair of the Integrated Development Studies Institute. And President Duterte again visited China in May of 2017 with the attending the Belt and Road Forum and putting back the engagement of China and the Philippines into high gear. Now, the most recent event that is of very great significance is the signing of 14 agreements between the Philippines and China during the visit of Premier Li Keqiang to Manila to attend the ASEAN Summit, the ASEAN Plus One, which is ASEAN Plus China, and East Asia Summit, and so on. We will elaborate on these 14 agreements a little later on. During the visit of Premier Li Keqiang, one of the goodwill gestures which was finalized is China's extending $75 million grant for 2 bridges across the Pasig to help alleviate Manila's traffic. This is just 2 of the 12 planned bridges across the Pasig to alleviate traffic in Manila, but it's a very good beginning. These 2 bridges are across Binondo to Intramuros for an outlet for the congested traffic in Binondo, and the Rockwell or the Estrella, Estrella to Mandaluyong. I forget the Mandaluyong side of the bridge, which will be expanded from a 2-lane temporary steel structure to a 4-lane concrete iconic bridge. During this visit of Premier Li Keqiang, also China signed the deals for the Kaliwa Dam and Chico River irrigation, which amounts to several 100 billion pesos. And then that's 140 billion. 140 billion from
so $3.5 billion.
The $3.5 billion is the next one. Well, we'll go to that. There's the $140 billion loan from China for the infrastructure project in general. And what you should, let's go back to that image there. What is important is Dominguez said they were negotiating the Chinese government to slap loans with only interest of less than 2% per annum. Yeah, so.
In contrast to the U.S. stating it's 10 to 20%.
That's right. The report, disinformation by Underscore.
Yeah, and printed
published
in
by the Forbes.
And picked up in all the local papers
without.
Right. But actually, China has been forgiving or re-extending a lot of loans around the world that U.S. has called in.
That's right.
Including recently the North Rail, North Rail debt of the Philippines has been waived. The fees and expenses has been shared by both sides, but it saved the Philippines several 100 million pesos in fees and over $100 million in the loan itself. But this has not been emphasized in the media.
Yeah, good you mentioned that again. The Kaliwa Dam, which will provide expanded water supply to Manila, is also being funded by ODA, which will mean less than 2% interest. This was reported by Maynilad to the public. The 3.4 billion projects is the next one. China to fund the $3.4 billion infrastructure projects, including the Manila-Bicol Rail. This is a major, over 500 kilometers rail line. And then, of course, China has been discussing with the Philippines for the second package of the second basket. China and the Philippines working to identify the second basket of infrastructure project. The 2 sides are working to identify the second basket of infrastructure projects, which could be built in the following years. And for me, the highlight of the second basket is the Agus Pulangi, or the, Maria Cristina Falls hydropower plant rehabilitation, and the bridges linking I think Panay, Iloilo, and Bohol. Then, of course, the highway and rail projects of Mindanao will be included.
Maria Cristina is very important because it's an enabler. Some of these investments and business are not just for consumption. They enable so many other things because the cost of production of electricity of Maria Cristina is the lowest in the country, and that will add so much power at a much lower cost.
Actually, the Agos Pulangi power production is already costing only less than 1 peso per kilowatt.
Yes, so why are we paying for expensive production and even solar when we can have such a low-cost power?
The rehabilitation of the Agos Pulangi would increase by many megawatts the production of this
in fact,
hydropower.
The current production of the Maria Cristina, the Agos Pulangi, is at 40 to 50% maximum. So there's a huge release of potential here. And it's also clean energy.
Yes, so we can look forward to a lot of developments in this cooperation between the Philippines and China. Okay, now we have the image of that first forum that IDSI organized, the Philippine-China Economic Forum towards Philippine Inclusive Growth, where George, of course, was one of the speakers, and a businessman from China, Huawei, official from Huawei,
yes, Huawei,
and local
phone maker using China parts to make phones. Actually, what we were trying to point out on that day is a lot of the enabling factors that China allows the Philippines are not caught in the statistics. For instance, China investing here and announcing it has caused so many countries to come also to invest. And then there is also the arms that the US and EU said they're going to withhold from the Philippines just when we needed it. When China sent 4 plane loads of arms here for free, then the other countries decided to deliver the arms just when we were fighting the rebels. And also the conditional aid that they were giving, they were saying conditioned on this and that, suddenly became unconditional. So it goes well beyond what China has been donating or giving to us. Also, these enablers, it's like the cell phones that instead of selling to us, they're allowing local players. If they're entrepreneurial, we have 3 brands that are local brands put together from China parts, has allowed the prices of cell phones to drop below 5,000 pesos. So that it's now, with one of them, is selling at about 1,500 only at retail, which massively increases by over 10 million users and links the Filipino regular person to the digital economy. They can learn from it and they can join it.
I have a touchscreen phone here. I won't mention the brand, but touchscreen phone for 1.5.
Unless they sponsor. Unless they sponsor.
Unless they sponsor.
But this has allowed the average Filipino to learn, even if they're in the farthest barrio, as long as there's internet, that they can learn, and then they can join and pay for and purchase things. And of course, the next step is to create the access to this Wi-Fi broadband, which the Philippines is now also encouraging China and other players to come in. And this indirectly has also caused the improvement of service because PLDT and Globe, I hear, has now accelerated its program of extending the broadband.
Well, of course, there's this good news that President Duterte is inviting Chinese companies to try to be the third player in the Philippine telecommunication market.
So that's on one hand, he's inviting telecommunications, but actually through the national state grid, China is going to invest additional $1 billion already, even without the deal, to extend to Visayas and Mindanao the broadband. And also, President Duterte, he's something of a pretty good negotiator, has also done a deal with Facebook. So he's dealing with both China and the US. So this is really an independent foreign policy. It's not as some people say.
What's the deal with Facebook? What's it about?
The deal with Facebook is going to give 2 terabytes of capacity broadband to the Philippine government so it can help extend the capability of the Philippines to use broadband. So it's also another way of extending to the last mile. So by negotiating this, all of this has never happened when we were negotiating as a satellite of the U.S. So we also have to make use of the infrastructure available, both digital, because it's not all about the money. The opportunities, why do we want them to invest the money or invest when we can invest ourselves? When the money is available at the lowest cost ever in the history of the world.
That's right. Yeah.
We should be taking advantage, being entrepreneurial, and doing this business ourselves. So we welcome those investments, particularly in areas where we cannot accomplish the things ourselves. But when we can, then let's take up the challenge. And the Federation and the IDC has been trying to also go out and train and orient people on how to be managing their enterprise. Actually, Duterte had spoken to the Federation, and he said that you guys cannot just give charity, you have to be teaching people how to start and scale up their enterprise. So that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. So the Federation is very active, but actually I still do not feel it in the regular entrepreneurial community of the Filipinos. Maybe the Chinoys have some advantage.
We need to have some cultural change. What we immerse ourselves in, we're saying, the kind of friends we spend our time on, because we've been giving these talks and we're linking up people. But yes, primarily it's been Chinoys and foreigners who've been taking up the slack and the spaces in the economy. It's like what Bruce Lee said. People say, oh, there are already these big players. But he said, there's the big stones in the glass, but there's room for smaller stones. After that, there's room for sand. After that, there's room for water. There's space for everybody. We just have to find our place there.
Yeah. But is the Federation the primary vehicle to help link and solve problems, or there are other institutions or the Chinese embassy, as you said, they'll set up a mechanism?
With the Chinese, it's like with any other business. We can go straight directly to the enterprises. There are also legal processes. Then we can go also, if the issues are large enough, we can go to the Federation. Sometimes, if they're big enough, we can go maybe to the embassy. But otherwise, Federation and other, not just the Federation, many foundations are helping. And in this training enterprise, Anvil is also very active.
Anvil, please tell us about Anvil.
Anvil is trying to link people up and generate more business. So it's less...
Anvil is an association of young entrepreneurs, Chinoy entrepreneurs.
Chinoy entrepreneurs, but most of our activities, the Filipino community and others are welcome to join us. It's primarily geared towards developing, enhancing, and creating more opportunities and enterprise. So we teach them how to get financing. We teach them how to pick partners. We give them actually partners and potential investors. So a lot of enterprise is being generated and scaled up through this direct membership. And
you're also honorary chair of Anvil? Honorary president or honorary chair?
We try to help, but it's primarily run by the young people today. So they have activities they enjoy, the socials, parties, but also at least half the activities are oriented towards business. We also orient towards, and we welcome the Filipino friends also to come during the times when we're talking about enterprise and entrepreneurship.
Okay. And now, recently I read the speech of Ramon Monson, I think, the new president of the Philippine Stock Exchange, which came out in one of the broadsheets. Anyway, the title of the report says Fourth World Economy, referring to the Philippines. And his basis for that claim is that Vietnam has overtaken the Philippines. It has 2 stock markets instead of the Philippines one. Capitalization, it's much larger than the Philippines. Double the number of listed companies than the Philippines, and so on. Of course, Vietnam also has had some tensions with China, but they are very quick to repair relations and stay ahead of the Philippines in relation to China's business.
Yes, that's part of the culture in Asia, that even when you have problems, you can put that aside and go forward and do things together. So Vietnam has been actively courting not only China but also the US. So they're playing everybody, and we should be smart, and we should also be doing this thing. That doesn't mean we have to give up claims, but it's not a focus, because when we become productive together, very often the disputes fall into the background, and they're not really that important. And in fact, actually, all this hyping up of the value of the economic activities in the disputed area, with oil, all these countries producing oil on the surface ground are going bankrupt. What do they think they can produce oil at 10,000 feet below the sea? It's not something that... and mineral rights generally benefit only the government and a couple of major companies. Has been shown to us by Malampaya, in which case China has been offering 60% of the income. In Malampaya, we are getting less than 10%. So we are not doing comparative news. We're not assessing our situation that accurately, because some people are trying to focus us towards the negative.
Yeah. Well, one of the factors that allow Vietnam to move very quickly to adjust to new geopolitical and regional conditions is that they don't have any drag. When the government decides they have to change, they change. Like in the Philippines, we have the constant drag of the Albert Del Rosario Institute, the American boys who continue to cast doubt on the new policies of the president and the engagement with China, and then resurfacing this drag. Again, I use the term because the South China Sea dispute issue is a weight, is a drag on our...
It's because it's a weight because they keep focusing on that when there are so many other things happening, and they're not even comparing it against themselves. You know, if we look at the number of countries the U.S. has invaded, or that in terms of the loans, it's the World Bank and the U.S. that has tried to take over and control different countries' economic policies, but instead they're trying to put the focus speculatively on China. They're saying that China will lend at 10 to 20%, but China is lending at below 3%. And the US and the World Bank has been the one that has been lending at 16, 20% previously. And then they took over, including the Philippines. And when they're saying you have to be careful about the projects, we have to remember we have to take care of ourselves in terms of analyzing the projects. In fact, the World Bank's 11 industrial projects earlier in the Philippines have all failed. There is not one major enterprise project. Of course, this is not talking about dams or infrastructure, but not one of the enterprise projects have succeeded under the World Bank. And this is true of their record all around the world. So perhaps they're not in really a position to talk about China's performance.
Well, looking back to those years of Marcos where he started to he desired to jumpstart industrialization through those 11 industrial projects. What the West wants is to lend money at high interest rates, and then they sabotage it through financial and other policies. That's what happened to copper smelting and so on.
If they see the World Bank at that time tried to force, actually every country, not just the Philippines, the Middle East, South America, they forced down all the economies, threw millions of people out of work just so their bankers can collect. Whereas China historically has restructured these loans, in fact given assistance in many cases. For instance, in Hungary, when they were having problems, the US and World Bank said they were going to withdraw all the bonds. And China came in and said that they will buy up the bonds that the World Bank releases, calls in. And because of that, the World Bank ended up not selling down the bonds.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I may have distracted you a little because I was going to refer to an item I just read. No? And this is the article of Pepe Escobar that came out in RI. China's Silk Roads, a massive multi-decade effort to challenge the West, and it's working. You know, and for example, he cites in the Central Asian, in the Eastern European republics, where the financial and economic links of the West is weak. China is taking advantage tremendously by contributing to the economies here. And of course, Central Asia. I bring this up because we also have to consider the Philippines in the Belt and Road Initiative. There's a lot of talk, and we're back on the map of the Belt and Road, but there is no clear vision for the Philippines about the Belt and Road and its role in the Belt and Road. There are alternative proposals from Victor Corpus, for example, to use the Cagayan area in the north, as a base for the new hub. There is the Paglinawan proposal for it to be done in the south, so it's near Oceania, Australia, and so on. But I think this is one area where we're groping, the role of the Philippines in the Belt and Road. I don't know if IDC is going to study this.
So we've looked at it in different angles. For one, we have been asked to harmonize our customs procedures and terminology. So China is going to help us on that, because that will help link us to the rest of the world. There's some dispute now about the standards of the gauges of the rails and cars, and because this also has an effect on how you're going to ship out the items. No, we also are looking at the Belt and Road is not just a physical infrastructure; it's also a cultural infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because it allows people to understand each other and move freely. Because now we're talking about movement of people and professions, and very much also the road is no longer just physical; it's digital. Because aside from the physical side of it has been moving forward very quickly around the world. China has already shipped at half the time goods from China to the UK directly.
That's right, yeah. From EU to London.
Yes,
EU.
and then they have sent, the rails in Pakistan, in Russia, Mongolia. They are all moving forward. The ones that are being built, the ones in Indochina are still have to be linked up. Some segments of it have been already started. Then they have to link it all up. But I think the biggest road here really, and as Jack Ma has said, where you don't have roads, where you don't have infrastructure, the internet can come up for this, because because it gives you financing, it gives you access to markets, and you can sell directly through the net. You actually bypass the middleman, and you can bypass a lot of the physical obstacles. So we have to look at all these opportunities, and we have to orient our people. We have to take this time to spend our energies and time developing this instead of partying all the time.
Yeah, I think IDC has a very important role to play in 2018, because these informations are not yet reaching our public. Of course, our program will always help in that. You have any plans for 2018, your vision for 2018?
Yes, we're looking at towards more actual starting off of enterprises, and we welcome people to join some of our activities. We are looking very much into technology as well. Of course, this helps certain sectors of the people, and we also are working on legislations to help release, because the Philippines, it's been shown in the ease of doing business. Senator Zubiri, Congressman Yap have filed them in the different legislatures. We have about triple to quadruple the amount of processes and signatures of our neighbors for almost every step and permit.
Again, let's repeat that. We have to double, triple?
We are almost triple to quadruple, at the least double the number of procedures and signatures.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of getting permits, licenses, approvals, it's a huge process. No? And for instance, it's just incorporating normally would take us several weeks under the normal process, whereas in Hong Kong or other places, it just takes an hour or two. Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam takes just a day. You know, at one time we were looking at just incorporating in a day, but now it's gone back to. So these are things we can help, and Duterte is pushing for this. President Duterte is pushing for this. He's asking all the agencies to use technology and review their processes together with the private sector.
Okay, we have our last minute. So how would you sum up 2017 and looking forward, what do you see in 2018 for Philippine-China and the global economy and our entrepreneurs in the Philippines?
What we see is that despite all the criticisms from the West and all the media hype, the economy is growing strongly. Every single local enterprise is growing. You know, it's maybe the ones from outside the country might be having second thoughts, but the slack is taken up by local, and I think it's a good thing because then the profits will be made by local companies rather than foreign companies. Okay. And I'm sure you would be the best person to say there's been a lot of progress in the relationship.
Yes, and our next episodes will feature again the wrap-ups of our regular resource persons and experts, Ambassador Albert Encomienda in the next episode, followed by General Victor Corpus, and after that, Celso Cainglet, and so on. So we'll give you a big picture, the big picture of the achievements of our new foreign policy and China's rise and the Belt and Road in the next 5 weeks. Maraming salamat po, and thank you again, George, and congratulations to your institute, and this will be helping the country in a very big way. Maraming salamat and have a good weekend.